you declared that you wanted this change. Why did you want it? If you wanted to lose weight and you're like, I'm gonna start going to the gym and eating better. And then 2 weeks in, a month in, you're back to eating pizza every other night. Why did you give up? And it's like, when you really have a deep understanding of your why behind something, you have a lot more motivation to complete it.
How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to What Matters Media Barber Chair Talks. My name is Matthew Baker, and today we had Gabe McMullan on. Gave him kind of a nice clean-up gentleman's cut, but we also talked all about his business and some of the challenges and things he's gone through with that, as well as just what it looks like to take risks. So thanks for jumping in. Let's get to the episode. How's it going, Gabe?
Good.
Welcome to the chair.
It's exciting to be back.
Yeah.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, I had you on for the Rescended podcast I was doing. It was just a couple episodes that we did, but kind of moved on from that more to focus on this.
Yeah.
But I was excited to get you on for a Barber Chair Talk where it's a little more laid back.
I'm always honored.
Hanging out. So it's great to have you back.
Yeah.
And if you want to know anything about Gabe's background or how he kind of got started and what he's doing, definitely check that. We'll put a link in the description. But yeah, so we'll just kind of jump in to a little conversation. So you've been photographing for quite a few years now.
Yeah.
Since you're on here last, you've kind of just kept pushing forward and getting deeper into what you do. Tell us a little bit about how your perspective has changed in the last couple of years about business and about your place in it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know how much my perspective has shifted of where my place is and where my role is. I am one of those people that I love business. I always wanted to have a business when I was a kid. I sort of wanted to have a business. I wanted to manage a restaurant, and having been in food for 10 years, I realized that was not very life-giving for me. It wasn't very fulfilling. So, finding something that was creative and let me use some of my talents and gifts, which I didn't even know I had at the time. It was something that I really got to develop. Was really special, and learning the business side of it came through a lot of trial and error. But yeah, it's just sweet. Running a business, having the freedom and flexibility to do whatever you would like is something that everybody kind of dreams of, but not everybody gets to have that opportunity. So my role right now in life is just, I think, setting the foundation for the future of, having a family someday and creating, a lot of freedom for that family. So I'm continually pushing my business. I primarily photograph weddings. Just recently launched, I guess 2 weeks ago, a commercial photography business.
Oh, that's fun.
Which is so silly for me to announce it and publicly make a Facebook page and Instagram for it, because I've already been doing this for a few years. I've been doing commercial, but it's felt so nice to have a space for it that I can share and kind of send people there to look at some of the work. And yeah, I'm excited to push that a little bit more. I've made some awesome connections already with getting that, up and running and moving forward. So yeah, I'm just stoked on that.
No, that's neat. And I obviously kind of watched the last interview to catch up on what's different, what's changed, what we want to talk about. And it was cool because last time you were on, you also talked about even the thought of doing commercial photography, and you're like, well, I haven't really done much of it before, but I'm just going to go into it. So it's cool to hear. I always love when people follow through on the challenges they give themselves.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that don't. There's a lot of people that say, oh, this would be really fun, or this would be really cool, but it stays as an idea. and doesn't really materialize, or kind of worse yet, some people don't even dream.
Yeah.
And they don't even have those thoughts, and they just think, you know what? I'm working in the food industry where I thought as a kid I might end up.
Yeah.
And well, that's what I told myself I'd do back then, so that's what I'm going to stick with, so that I can say I stuck with something.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I think what you touched on dreaming is so important. We feel like we can't dream big, or we feel like we just, dreaming feels fruitless because it seems so far away, but I think it's like really important to dream bigger than you've ever dreamed before. Because I think a lot of those things are actually attainable. We just can't envision it, so we don't think it's possible. I even just the other day, I have a dream journal that somebody gave me. It's just write down things that you want in the future, and so it's been cool to like look back. I haven't opened it up in like a year probably.
Yeah.
So it was cool to like open it up, write down some dates of when things were accomplished.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then put like another 10 or 12 dreams in there.
That's awesome. And it's funny you said people don't dream very big. One of my biggest inspirations in some of my process was a book called Dream Big by Bob Goff.
Bob.
Have you read that book?
I started it. I never finished it.
It's so good. It's basically, I think the tagline to it is like, know what you want and something else.
It's okay.
I forget.
I have the book. I've just never finished it, which I regret.
It's definitely worth getting back into. And I was reading it when I was starting my business. And a lot of people have a lot of opinions when you're going through dreams in your life. And a lot of people will try to edit your dreams for you so you don't hurt yourself. Yeah. But most of those people are doing that out of like a kind of scarcity kind of
fear and
idea.
insecurity maybe. Or it's like they're afraid because the dreams that they had for themselves didn't get accomplished. So they feel like they're protecting you by editing your dreams and mitigating it because they don't want to see you in pain. Yeah. But I think like every experience, every challenge, every dream you have that you're pushing towards, anytime there's a mistake or a failure or a letdown, it can be viewed as encouragement to keep pushing forward, I think.
Yeah, and I think any lesson is all perspective. It's all perspective and how you're going to take it, how you're going to grow from it, or how you're going to kind of shrink back. One thing for me was I realized that in kind of a hard breakup I had, I was pretty crushed by it, and I was like, oh man, I thought this was like the thing I was going to be having for the rest of my life, and then what I felt like, just kind of in my heart, I felt like the Lord was saying, like, if your heart still breaks, it's still soft, and that's kind of where I was like found. A
little bit of comfort.
Yeah, a little bit of comfort, a little bit of like realizing, oh wow, I am growing, and I am still like I'm not going into reverting to cynicism. I'm not going into a place of, you know what? Well, if it happened this way, then that's how it's always going to be for me. But it's like, you know what? I'm not going to stop loving. I'm not going to stop putting myself out there to care. Yeah, I'm going to keep loving.
I get that. When you were talking about like some of the dreams you had, what were some of the dreams you had after reading that book? Like, did you go through a process of like writing things down, or was it all just in your head, or was it on paper?
That's a good question. I think some of it was in my head, or a lot of it. I actually maybe 2 years before that had a person at my church. Her name's Crystal, at my old church, that she kind of just encouraged me to, hey, write down the things that you feel like you've prayed for and that have been big prayers. And then also write down the prayers that you felt have been answered. And so kind of similar to your dream journal. Yeah. But kind of more of a, I guess you'd call it prayer journal.
Sure, yeah.
And I kind of a little bit translated that to what I was doing with the business. But I think the reason it was mostly in my head was that it was I was reading it and I was directly applying it to my situation. Yeah. So I was in such a good time in my life where it was like, okay, it's telling me to write down. The book was like, write down what you're dreaming for, and if it's a Vespa, write a Vespa. Be honest.
Yeah.
And so I did that kind of stuff. So that was part of it, but also when it's telling you how to kind of pursue what you're going after, I would just pursue it in that way and just see the fruit of that. So that was kind of how the process went for me reading that book for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. It can kind of also lead way into, I was also working on a gratefulness journal.
Oh, nice.
Where it's like you can look back at all the things that you prayed for and dreamed of and look at what has been accomplished and just be thankful for that.
That's really cool. Now, do you journal on a regular basis?
Probably more than the average human, but not as regular as I would like to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's been a big part of my journey in life. Yeah. And maybe the past year, maybe a little less than that, I've finally been consistent with it.
It's good.
Where it's at least 3 times a week, but normally more so every day.
Yeah.
And it's something that really, I think different people have different minds of how they think through stuff.
Yeah.
Some people process inwardly, some people process outwardly. But I think a journal is good for both kinds of people, because if you're processing inwardly, then you process and write it down, and it kind of solidifies in your brain what you just processed through. Yeah. For me, I'm an external processor. So most times when I'm processing, if I'm not processing in a journal, I'm eating my words. I'm talking with friends, and usually it's with trusted people at this point in my life.
Yeah.
I'm doing a lot less eating my words, because usually I'm talking with friends that understand my process. I'm also journaling more, which gives me more place to process.
It kind of gives you confidence to speak to your friends after you've been journaling, because you've, like you just said, you've processed it a little bit.
Yeah.
When you journal, is it just like short little tidbits, or is it like a couple pages, or what's that look like?
So for me, it's usually I have a journal that's probably, I don't know,
Small
yay big.
Gotcha.
Yeah, small.
Yeah. Little moleskin, or?
Just a little cheap thing I got off Amazon.
Yeah, I got you.
I feel like, it kind of a side note, but it's kind of funny, like, whenever I've been given nicer journals, I don't use them because I don't want to wreck them, even though it's such a funny concept. Like, I'm like, it's such a beautiful thing, and my handwriting's like, it's fine, but it's not great. I'm like,
but who else is gonna read it?
True.
Yeah. As long as you can read your own handwriting, which I've not been able to do at times for myself.
That's funny. No, it's legible. It's just not always beautiful. I have siblings that have beautiful handwriting, and I'm just like, makes me feel self-conscious.
Yeah.
But
Get that.
Either way, when I write, it's usually at least one of those small pages. And sometimes it's a page and a half. Sometimes it's 2.
Nice.
It really depends on what's going on.
What you're going through. Yeah.
Yeah. But usually I have this. Have this page, and I just kind of try to fill it up. And sometimes it's a real coherent thought.
Sure.
Other times it's quite scattered, and I just kind of put a little dash mark when it's like a totally different thought.
Yeah.
It might go from a thing that I'm kind of processing through with God, or to, man, today was really a crazy day.
Yeah.
One of my clients said some wild stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And being a barber, you have a lot of things you hear that you can't repeat.
Yeah, I believe that.
Because there's kind of like you want to respect people's privacy. So my journal knows a little bit of that stuff.
Client-patient privilege.
Yeah.
Do you ever go back and like reread stuff from weeks, months, years ago?
Yeah, honestly, especially around New Year's.
Yeah. Most
times I get more like sentimental about dates and stuff. But also when I'm going through different times where, kind of like you said about your journal, how you have like a gratefulness journal, things like that. I just kind of put it all mostly in one. So I try to remember different times of life. Sometimes I'll just open it up to a random spot and be like, I wonder what happened back here, or I wonder what happened 2 years ago. But this year, actually, I looked a lot back into my journals, and what was really cool was to see, well, it was kind of, I wouldn't even say cool, but it was, I kind of looked at myself and I said, finally, because I'd seen myself wanting to make changes in my life for a really long time, and I had made changes, but not those changes.
Okay.
There's changes that I knew were really important for me to make in how I viewed myself, how I viewed others, how I viewed different situations and hang-ups that, with different ways I would deal with anxiety or all those kind of things that I would say, God, I want to change this. This is the last time I'm going to be, thinking about myself like this, or thinking down on myself, or comparing myself in those ways. I'm going to not be on social media so much, all these different things. And then at the end of the day, it was just a really, it was a really true hope, but it wasn't something I was willing to put into practice. And something that changed for me was, I said, just this year, well just kind of in a time of prayer, I felt like God was kind of saying to my heart, He's like, I've given you everything you need. I've given, not that I couldn't listen to another podcast or listen to another sermon, but He's like, you don't need another podcast or another sermon to experience what I have for you and the freedom that you need. Well, I've given you what you need. Now, go walk in that, and it's time to kind of grow up, be a man, and walk in what I have for you. And so, even just like this month, we're talking New Year's stuff because we're recording this in January. It won't be posted in January, but as we're talking about this, some people have probably already given up on some New Year's resolutions. What would you kind of say, Gabe, to the people that are now, halfway through the year, away from their New Year's resolutions, that they've given up? How would you encourage someone who wants to make a change that they've said they've made it a lot of time, they wanted to make a lot of times but hasn't?
That's so tough. I think it really comes down, it's kind of a heart issue of you declared that you wanted this change. Why did you want it? Dig into that a little bit more. If you wanted to lose weight and you're like, I'm going to start going to the gym and eating better. And then 2 weeks in, a month in, you're back to eating pizza every other night. It's what was the cause that you gave up on that? Why did you give up? And it's when you really have a deep understanding of your why behind something, you have a lot more motivation to complete it and
that's good.
To dig into it. There's a really great book. This is sort of related. Simon Sinek wrote a book called Start With Why. And it's all about having a crystal clear message of your business or your beliefs. And when you can elaborate on that crystal clear reason with your employees, they can get behind it a lot more if they resonate with it.
That's good.
I wish I could give some examples. I can't quite recall. He talked a lot about Apple, Macintosh and Apple. And how they were able to bring in people that were top quality because they believed in the mission that Apple was doing. So it's if people can engage and agree with your mission, I think your vision for this barbershop or What Matters Media, etc. People can get engaged in that and behind the heart of it. So it's easy for people to rally.
For sure. And I think that applies to anything that we do.
For sure.
Because if you're a business owner or if you're a person who's just a friend, there's things that you can see in someone's life and you can see in life that I think everyone can see the brokenness of life. And you might not be able to change the next policy that brings justice to the place you want to see justice. But you can change the person next to you and how they feel about themselves.
For sure.
And you can encourage them into the hope that you have. And I think it's, like you said, if you don't know that hope that you have, if you don't have hope, then it's going to be really hard to stick to any sort of change.
Yeah.
Because that hope is either fleeting, it's in something that can't hold the weight of your hope, or it's something that is just totally different from what reality is.
Yeah, it's like back to that example of like you want to lose weight in the New Year's. Do you just want to lose weight because you want to look better, or like that person is not going to have lasting conviction to eat right and exercise.
Yeah, because you'll never look exactly how you want
exactly.
to look.
Yeah, we're always insecure of how we look.
Yeah.
But the person that says, I want to lose weight because of my kids and I want to play sports with them when they're older, that person has a lot more personal conviction to fulfill their goals and dreams.
That's really good. Yeah. Now, book reading is something that is relatively new for me. I've been audibling
Audible's great
for a while, which is definitely like an amazing, I wouldn't even say just an amazing start. It was an amazing start for me. For a lot of people, it's an amazing place to just land.
Yeah.
But for me, I've been currently reading a lot more books physically and replacing, social media time or kind of times when I'm doing just like, mostly on my phone. Replacing that time with with reading, and it's been really impactful in my life. Now you have a lot of passion for both your faith, but also for business. What are some of your what would you say are some of the most impactful business books for you? Because I know faith books. You talked in the last video about
Don Miller.
Don Miller.
Golf.
Something about. I always forget the title.
A Million Miles in a Thousand
Years. And Scary Close, which I actually read now. He told me about, and I
so good.
Maybe took me.
How many times did you cry?
It was.
You don't have to.
A couple times. It wasn't like a deep cry, but it was definitely like a deep conviction of like, oh wow, I want to really deepen my connections with people. And I don't think I have a big problem with that personally, but I think it gave me more confidence to do that.
Sure.
And that it was, because I guess for me, a lot of times I can feel like my meekness is something that is not normal or not always accepted.
Yeah.
And probably, different places, but literally I was applying for a job one time with a plumbing company. And the guy's like, I'm afraid you might be too meek for this company. I'm like,
oh,
what?
Okay.
I'm like, that doesn't sound like a bad thing, but I guess,
What does that have to do with installing
what's that?
tubes?
Yeah. So, but that book really kind of encouraged me that like, hey, what you're doing and what you're wanting and what you're wanting to deepen in your life is actually something that's a good thing and something that's really positive for life.
For sure. Honestly, I could even argue in one world that those are both great business books because the first one is all about story and how do you tell your story, which can be easily applied to any business.
Yeah.
And Scary Close is about relationships, and it's like how do you create and build healthier relationships and have the appropriate boundaries. So removing those two books that are both fantastic, some of the best business books that I've read, one is about 100 some years old called How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
Have you read it?
I haven't. I need to.
It is.
I downloaded it.
It's so funny because it's from a different century, and the rules and stories and things that he talks about are so applicable today. Where small things like people just want to talk about themselves. So how do you learn about them before you meet them and just let them indulge on themselves kind of. And so that book was fantastic. It's been a few years since I've read that, but I should do that again soon. Other good business books, I mentioned Start With Why. That's fantastic. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, which is all on negotiating.
Okay.
just incredible stories of, life or death situations with terrorists or kidnappers, and how do you negotiate those situations, and how do you ask questions from your friends to get them to be a little bit more vulnerable. So those were great. I'm trying to think. I could not tell you the number of business books I've read, but I also just can't recall them off the top of my head right now.
No, that's a lot of great ones. And for what I've heard you say a couple times is, I've read that this many times. I've read that twice, once every other year. I read that once a year, or I need to read that book again.
Yeah.
Why do you think for you it's important to reread books
I think it's
that you've gotten stuff from?
Retention. We go through so much in our lives right now, like with our cell phones or with our jobs, with our friends. So it's very easy to let things go, or like memory to slip. And I think anything in life gets better with repetition. So whether that's, cutting hair or taking photos, doing video, like painting, you don't get better by doing it once a year. You get better by doing it, 10 times a day or whatever. Like a musician is not going to be a good performer if they only perform once a year. So
for sure.
Or practicing their instruments. So it's like almost like a muscle, a creative muscle or a memory muscle to like continually stretch it.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool because a lot of these books, you can glean something very valuable out of it. And then when you go through it again, you learn something else. So why would you not want to continue that learning process? Right?
Yeah. Do you mark up your books?
Sometimes. It depends on the book.
Yeah.
Not always.
Yeah. I started doing it with certain books, and like you said, there's certain books that I was like, this one, it's called Long Obedience in the Same Direction.
Okay.
It's got a lot of good stuff in it, but I felt like it was, for some reason, I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to mark this one up.
Sure.
The first time I read it through. I'll probably read it through again by Eugene Peterson.
Yeah.
Is that the thing? I think.
Yeah, well, what's one of my favorite things to do is buy a book used. In hopes that it's kind of marked up. Yeah. Because like you're like, oh, well, what was important to this person? Yeah. That can be really sweet. Yeah.
And kind of on the idea of like reading through books twice, I borrowed a book from a friend who read this book called A Shepherd's Look at Psalms 23, and she read it twice and marked it up with two different color pens. And it was cool to see like what God was kind of showing her in two different seasons of life.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah,
and there's so many different things that I've read in books that I've just totally missed, and then you go back and read it again in a totally different season of life, and it's what you need for that part of life. Yeah, and it just didn't apply to what you were going through before, so you didn't really hit.
That's kind of how I feel about Scary Close and Donald Miller and some of these other business books. It's like, well, I'm getting different takeaways, which is really sweet. Which I don't know if the author intended that, but it is really cool that happens.
Yeah, it is neat.
It's like music. Sometimes you can really get into like one song off of a record, and then something happens to you in life, and the other songs are more important to you.
Yeah. I remember there was an Amanda Cook album that I listened to a bunch of years ago, and I was like, yeah, that's fine. It's the record House on a Hill.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I remember listening. I probably listened to it a couple times, not necessarily even through, because it didn't really hit that well for me. I never really went through a place of like heartache or really. I never lost someone in my life. I never, had anything like that. Never had really that much disillusionment at that point. But then I had this time where I really went through a lot of like disillusionment with different people that I realized then listening through that album, I was like, whoa, this is so powerful, and totally changed my perspective on how I saw myself and saw people and saw my situation as well.
That's good.
Instead of being a hopeless situation, it was a place of, I think the first song is called Awakening. Like, this is my awakening. And, it's just like kind of just putting a different song on. and giving yourself something that's positive instead of something that's hopeless.
Yeah, that's good.
So haircuts don't take as long as we could talk. And
That's
we're
fair.
getting closer to the end of this haircut. But as soon as I finish trimming up your mustache, I'd love to get towards the end and ask you, the one question I love to ask people is, what's a piece of advice that you would give your 14-year-old self?
You ready for it? Or you
Actually, we'll do this.
A little more.
Alex will have to do a little music behind this. Shout out to Alex on the camera. I always like to shout him out and make him show people who he is.
Producer.
Okay, I'm ready for you.
All right. I think if I have to like go back 10, 15, 20 years to tell myself something, it would be just like take risks, start sooner. I think we're so afraid to take risks. We're afraid of getting out of our comfort zone. And I think God really rewards risk. I think He wants us to do things that scare us because it makes us stronger, and it allows us to put more faith into Him when we are doing something that we're uncomfortable with. So I think, I would tell myself, like, try something new, try doing a different job. Like, I never quit jobs. Like, I would stay at restaurants way longer than I should have until I was basically like forced out in different ways. Not fired, but just like it was way past my prime.
Yeah.
So that's what I always tell people, especially like young entrepreneurs or creatives, like just take risks, like quit your job to go do this or do that, or do the thing that you're passionate about. Like, don't do it foolishly.
Yeah.
Like, have some reserves in finances so that way you can make a mistake and not be strapped. Like, have 3 to 5 months reserves in finances for all bills and fun money. That way you're not stressed, because I think that's the hard part, is like everybody's so stressed about money, especially in this day and age.
Yeah.
However, if you have that like financial foundation, when you're starting your own business or pursuing something that brings you joy in life, you're not worried about the thing that most people are stressed about.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, including myself, have struggles living within their means.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't have a whole bunch of crazy debt, thankfully.
Yeah.
But still, this year I'm really wanting to lean into living within, and not even within, but actually below my means, so I can create some wealth and the ability to help more people. And
100%.
How would you? I know that's something that you've talked about before. How would you talk on that, or how do you do it personally?
With like finances?
Yeah.
I take risks. No, it is interesting. I'm like, one of the risks I took in the past 2 years was leveraging the first house I bought to buy a second house and live in it.
Yeah.
And it was good, but some things happened that were financially very stressful. So I'm actually in the process of like putting that second house back on the market to sell, which feels very humbling, because it's like, man, it feels like I'm taking a step back. Like, I want real estate. I want to get like 10 houses or more, maybe, who knows. And so like it feels really weird to go backwards.
Yeah.
But this year has been so financially stressful. It just actually makes sense to unload this, so that way the foundation's a lot better for the next investment.
Yeah, so even sometimes the risk is in allowing a dream to
kind of take
change.
a step back. Yeah, change, take a step back, or just like reevaluate.
Yeah. Sometimes it's the dream's not bad, but the timing sometimes is off.
For sure.
And allowing and not looking at yourself as not looking at what you've done as a failure just because it didn't work the way you thought it was. Because there's so many people, I mean,
Yeah, there's-
people always talk about that, how
Yeah.
like the most successful people failed a lot.
There can't be shame involved. Once there's
Yeah.
shame involved, that's when the fear creeps in, and you think that you can't do the dreams that you have. So I think about that a lot.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Hey, thanks for coming back on
Yeah.
the channel, Gabe.
Stoked to be here.
I'll show you the haircut. How's that look for you, man?
Yeah, it looks great. Appreciate it.
Sweet. Sounds good, dude.
Yeah.